Welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad to see you. Today we are going to carve dwarves. Today we're going to carve dwarven rogues. And I've got three variations here on them. You can see the beards and the noses are just slightly different. The hoods are slightly different. The one in the middle is the one that we're going to carve today. But the one on the left and right are ones that you can carve as well on your own. So you can change things up. And I've got three different finishes. This is a black stain and Danish oil mix 50-50. And then the middle one here is the black walnut Danish oil and paste finishing wax. And then this is a Varathane Cabernet color, and I really like that red. The Danish oil, of course, has always been my favorite for a long time, but this black stain, it really turned out pretty well too. So yeah, we'll get into that in the end of the video. But for today, we're going to carve this guy right here, and I want to show you the other ones so you can see the options you have for how we're going to carve him. We're going to carve him not just with the knife, we're going to use a gouge to do some texturing in the beard, and I'm going to use a little V-tool as well, and we're going to use a gouge to do this line here on the belt or on the back. So you can do this mostly knife only. You don't have to use a gouge to do that details and texturing if you don't want to, but it's an option for you. So I'm going to show you what you can do with it if you have one available. So let's flip the camera around and we'll jump right into it. All right, dwarf rogue. We're going to carve him with a 1 3/4 inch rough out knife that I have. I'm also going to show you some things we can do with a number 9 gouge and a number 12 V tool that I have here from File Tools. So we're going to be using those in this just for detail stuff. You're going to be able to carve this whole thing knife only, but if you want to do things like add texture to the beard, that's where a gouge is really going to come in handy to add these lines right here. The rest of the carving we can do with just the knife. If you want to add like texture like this in the back of the hands, that's where you're going to need a gouge. I'm going to use a V tool for things like putting this channel in here in the back of the carving, but you can do something like this with the knife just as easily. You can also use a gouge to put a little detail here in the back of this belt. Like I said, you don't have to use that stuff. You can just do this knife only and just not add those details like I got in the beard here or what have you. But if you want to, that's an option for you. I'm going to go over what you can do with that and how you can do it. So what we're going to be working with today is a 4-inch tall block of basswood right there, and it's 2 inches by 2 inches square. To start with, I draw a line from the top corner to the bottom corner and then across as well. And then about a third of the way over, about 7/8 of an inch over, we're going to draw a straight line right here, okay? 7/8 of an inch in, 7/8 of an inch in, along this plane here. So 7/8 measure from this corner to here is where the side of that head is. Now this corner of the head right here, this is about 1 inch down, and then this is about 1 1/8 down. And so from that 1 1/8 to that inch, we're going to draw a straight line here, be in an angle right there, but it's a straight line between those 2 points, and that's going to form the side of our head and our shoulders. The bottom corner of the elbow is 2.5 inches down. Let me double check that. Yep, 2.5 inches down. So from the top of the carving is 2.5 inches down to the bottom of that elbow, 2.5 inches down to the bottom of that elbow as well. And then we're going to come in on the arms from there, just at a, it's probably like the opposite angle of up there. And just come right down, draw another little line right here, about there, roughly about midway between the head and the edge of the carving, and kind of come out a little bit. And that's just there for a visual reference, because we'll be carving that, just eyeballing it as we go to figure out what we want for this dwarf. Do we want to be thinner along the bottom? Do we want to be thicker? Whatever we want, we're going to do that, and then we're going to adapt as we go. The inside of the arm here, that's 5/8 of an inch from the outside of the carving. So 5/8 of an inch in, that's where we're drawing the inside of that arm. And generally speaking, the inside of that arm, that's about where you want this outer area of the body to be. So you can make sure that's exactly 5/8 of an inch if you want to. And I would just kind of curve it out, like I said, toward the outside a little bit. So that's where we're at for the carving today. Let's go ahead and jump into getting this carved. With most figure carvings, I would start on one of the corners and I start working my way off the side of the head here. So I'm going to go ahead and start right here. Same thing. I'm going to work my way in and curve the knife upward and just take off some wood to make ourselves a little shelf there for that shoulder. And just keep working it in. Take a look at where you're at every now and then just keep generating wood chips. like that right there. I am recording this video after a day full of carving at Wayne Larimore's house in Sparta, Illinois. So that's when this video is being recorded, but it's going to be uploaded the Monday after I get done with that. So by the time you guys are seeing this video, I will have been spending a full weekend at Wayne Larimore's house doing a lot of caricature carving and practicing. Right now on this other side here, I'm going to do the same thing on this side that I just did on this side. You can see we get that fairly well lined up, pretty close. We're just going to leave it there for now. We're going to adjust as we go. But yeah, I got a lot of caricature carving done this weekend. A lot of fun was had. It is so neat to be able to sit down with other folks who are carvers, who are taking carving seriously and wanting to get better, and to be in that environment of learning and exploration of this hobby is such a wonderful thing. I am so happy I've had the opportunity to do that kind of thing. If you guys ever get the opportunity to do it, you should do it as well. Absolutely fantastic. So there we go. I've got that lined up pretty well. So that's our start for the back, or for the sides of our head. Now, we haven't got it all the way, but we don't need to get it all the way. That's just our rough start. Now this back side here, that's the front side. We got our drawings. This is the back side. That big corner here, we don't need all that. So let's go ahead and take a good chunk of it off. So I'm just going to start here relatively in the middle and then just carve up and out. And I take a bunch of it off. You can see I'm taking about that much off. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom half here. Now, depending on how you do this, the wood might start splitting here. If it does, it is splitting. See how it's split right there and ripped rather than cut. It is splitting in a way that is going to be problematic. And when I say problematic, I mean it's going to be going too deep as you carve, right? So like that one right there came off pretty straight, but you wind up risking things when you carve against the grain because it could wind up ripping off a whole much more than you need to rip off. So it might be better to simply start a little bit higher up here and carve things off, because then if I carve in the opposite direction and carve against the grain, I won't be ripping and tearing as much off, so it's less for it to travel and it won't rip as deep if it does start to tear. So I can do shallower cuts for one as I'm carving against the grain and take off less, and then by lessening the distance I need to carve, which is why I started carving further down here first, I can help to mediate or limit the amount of damage that might get done by tearing. So good tips for carving against the grain. Taking it slow and taking smaller chunks, you can see that you don't see much tearing. There is a little bit of tearing happening, but you don't see it much. And it's harder to feel there as you get it done. But that is roughly what we wanted to do for taking wood off of the back of this guy. Now, the same thing on the front, because we don't have like a hammer sitting up here in the front or anything that's going to be sticking out real far, we can take off a bit of the front of the carving. So starting in the middle and carving up, I'm just going to take off a little bit. Not as much I did out in the back, probably maybe half as much, but enough to put a little indentation and get that hard line off there. And again, we can take off a little bit at a time if we want to here in the front, and then help reduce the amount of tearing that can happen. You can also carve up that middle a little bit more, going with the grain, going in this direction here. And then we can flip it around and get a bit more of that off. That one tore a little bit more than I wanted, but that's okay. Alrighty, so we're making good progress. We've got the sides done, the front and back are smoothed down a little bit. Let's go ahead and set in those elbows on the left and right side. So what we're going to do is we're going to start on that line right here, and I'm just going to rock that knife blade in right along the plane of that cut. You can see what we're doing, right? And then I'm just going to stop cut right up to it and chip it out. Do that some more. Chip it out. And chip it out. So we got that started, and you can see we got that coming out quite a bit farther than we need. So we can go ahead and take a bit more of that off. We want it to come out. We want it to be out real far. That's fine for right now, but like that. So let's go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. And again, we're just going to carve right on that line. We'll rock it in. We'll stop cut down to it. holding that. And there we go. And that's about in that corner. So we're going to do the same thing here. We can take a little bit off in the opposite direction and then bring it in, chip it out. Take a look. That looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. So we're making good progress here, making all kinds of progress. Moving along just as quick as we need to. Alrighty, let me adjust this finger guard. For the arms, let's go ahead and start to block in the inside of our arms. We got these elbows here marked out right there, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to go straight in on this plane, so straight up and down, straight in, and I'm going to put the tip of the blade in that elbow, and I'm just going to rock that tip in like so, okay? So the tip went in all the way at that point, and the back end is coming down to about the top of that line that I did, and not much farther. I'm going to pull it right out, and we're going to do the same thing with other angles. So right here, it's kind of angled down, and I'm going to go with the tip right on that elbow, and I'm just going to work it straight in. And I'm going to let that blade be coming up and out a bit, right? I just want to sink in that elbow. That's all we're looking at setting in right now is just the elbow. So now I'm going to carve down with that tip, following the inside line of the elbow, all the way down and bring that knife down to the inside of that elbow. You should be able to chip it all out as one piece. Obviously, I didn't quite get it, and that's okay. You might not quite get it either. You say, hey, John, I didn't quite get it either. So there we go. That's what we're looking to do. Just put that little chip right there. Put a little chip right there. That's all we're looking to start. So same thing on this side right here. Tip right into the elbow, rock it in a bit like so. Bring it around the other side. Tip into that elbow, and then rock it in like that. Pull it out, and then we're going to carve down to free that up like so. So you've got those elbows starting to get set in. Now we've got all of the saw marks here on the carving, and those saw marks are going to give us a problem later, so we want to go ahead and get rid of them because saw marks take paint and stain differently. Now, if you have a tool like this KCT number 3 gouge, you can use this to eliminate a lot of those saw marks. You can also just use your knife. So you just take a knife and just start to slowly go around the carving and take off just a little bit of the surface wood there, just to get rid of those saw marks and leave it a clean knife cut line. You can also use a tool like this number 3 KCT to do it, right? And so this is a little bit easier sometimes for me. I like this tool for this purpose. This is the whole reason I have this, is for removing saw marks or for rough out marks in our rough out. This is a very good tool for that. Another tool I have that's kind of the same kind of purpose is this this Drake tool. This is a number 2. That's a wide number 2. It's not quite as wide as this KCT number 3, but it's close. So if you had a tool like that, you could use this and do the same kind of thing and just pull off that excess wood, right? When it comes to how we carve, people favor tools that they have grown accustomed to using, that they have learned how to use. So don't get hung up on what tools I may be using on any given piece. Think about what tools you have and what things you can do with those tools to elicit the same cut or a similar look, because that's really where the root of carving is going to be taking place for all of us, because there is inevitably more than one way to do anything that we do. Like when it comes to making a stop cut, you could make it with this knife here. I could cut down in here like so with this in a corner. I could do the same thing on this side, and I could chip it out like this right there. You can use this knife like that. But most people don't think about using a knife like this in that way, about using a knife like this to do like a pyramid cut, okay? So I use that corner of it right into here. I'm going to use another corner of it right into there. And then I use this thing to just chip that out. And look at that. I just made a chip cut with a gouge. It's not the way that this tool was designed to be used, one might say, and I would disagree with that. This tool is designed to carve wood. However, I use it to carve wood is a good way to carve wood. And you can do the same thing with all of your tools if you start thinking about how to use them in ways you might not have thought before. So that's my little PSA on tools. And I'm going to go ahead and knock out the rest of these saw marks real quick. Eliminate them so that we can continue the carving and not have them in the way. And then when we do the rest of our lines on this thing here, we're not going to be worried about having saw marks left or getting our detail carvings in, our detail in on the front, and then having to eliminate saw marks afterwards. Okay. So let's think where we're going to start at in this. Let's start with the back of the head. We want to bring the back of the head in a good bit because a head doesn't just come straight up like that. It kind of comes down a bit in the back, right? You take a look at this carving or this one, you can see we've already got that kind of thing going on here. And of course, in the upper left here, if I didn't mention it, this overlay is this carving right here. It's the one that we're working on right now. And you can reference up here to see exactly what we did and how we did it and what's going to look like when we get done. It's a fantastic thing. I really like that overlay. So what I'm going to do to start setting this up is I'm going to start taking wood off the corner here. So you can see that this is the flat plane of the back, okay? This is the back right side, and I'm going to start taking off this flat plane. I'm going to start taking off this corner here. So starting at the shoulder, and then working my way up, I'm just going to start bringing that in and taking off wood. Like so, okay? It looks pretty off, doesn't it? This is why we have that line here in the back, because now we want to take off of this side on this plane, and we want to bring that corner back over onto that line, and that's going to help line us back up the way that we want it to be. Not quite there yet, but we're working on it. Almost there. Pretty good. Okay, now we got that done. I'm going to take off that back corner a little bit right there. And that is about the angle we want to get. We could go a little bit more severe if we wanted to, but that's going to be just fine right here. I'm going to start taking off this top corner all the way around. The last of the saw marks that we have on here, right? So let's go ahead and take those off now. Because we don't need them anymore. We've got the head lined up kind of where we want it. I might be able to leave the middle one if I wanted to, so I can help line up to make the head a little bit off center, but I don't need to do that. I'll show you how to do it without it. Okay, well, looks like I got a little tearing going on there, right? That's okay. Just fine. We need to clean up this front anyway. All right, so we're generating a lot of wood chips. Now, looking at the front of this carving, this is where our head's going to wind up going, right here in the front, right? The problem is that a head isn't sitting out in front of the body like this. It's going to come back a little bit. So starting right here in line where the top of the arm is, right here where the top of that armpit is, right about there in the front, we're going to come in here and just start carving up and out, okay? So a little bit on the right side, a little bit on the left side, and start to form kind of a new peak right here in the front on either side, and try to keep it lined up or relatively in the middle. Doesn't have to be perfect, but just roughly. So you can see we start bringing that back a bit, a little bit up the middle too. Let's come back some, right? Just enough, just enough. Okay, so on the front of this carving, we're going to do a couple things here. We want to put a dagger in one hand, and we want the other hand on the right side here, or on his left, we want that hand to be holding on to the belt. So we're going to have a belt come across the front. Before I get too far into this, I'm going to take these hard corners off here, right? I'm going to round this front off a little bit more, because then as we draw across it with our pencil won't get caught on all those hard edges really easily. And so it'll be easier for us to draw out these next things, because we're going to be drawing these out without much measurements here. We're going to draw it out according to where our hands end here, okay? So for this guy, we're going to come down from there. Now this length from this armpit to the elbow, We want from this elbow to our wrist to be the same length as from this armpit to our elbow. And you can use your pencil if you want to measure that. So from that pencil tip to up there, that's about yay long. And so we can come down here and we can realize, all right, so about there is where that hand's going to be, right? So we can come down, bring that out like so. And there's our hand right there. And now we want a blade to come out of that hand, okay? And we might want that blade to widen a little bit as it comes down. Widen a little bit as it comes down. Is that too wide? I don't know. This could be like a fantasy style blade, right? That doesn't look bad. Doesn't look bad at all. And then we'll end that sleeve right there. That'll be the hand right here. And that belt will come past here. So for a buckle in the front, right? Let's say we want to do a big buckle. We want to put something on it, like a little skull like we did in the other ones. Okay? We can have that big old buckle right in front like so, right? Now for this hand here, from the same length here to here, and that's about that length right there. I can eyeball that and see. So for this one, I want to bring, first off, when you have a hand sitting on a belt, right? Let's say a belt's coming through here. If I have my hand on that belt, you see that thumb is going to sit on top of it like so. We're going to have those fingers coming down, just like we did with, say, this hand here or this hand here. So I'm going to have that thumb sitting kind of hooked over the edge of the belt and then have the fingers hanging down. And that'll be on the belt. So we get the belt is going to be coming over right through here, okay? So that thumb can come over right here and come down. Back over to the hand, and then the rest of the hand can come over, and up like so. And that'll be our hand that we're going to cut in. And the belt will, of course, go right behind there. Now that belt is going to come behind the character as well. Around there, there's just a rough drawing, just a rough outline. Is that the same spot? That's roughly the same spot. We got a little bit low on that side as we went around. So let's just take a little erasing action. I'm going to take off that hard line. That keeps messing me up. If I talked about in the front, we eliminated that, you know. So we need to do the same thing on the back a little bit. If that makes it easier on you, just go ahead and take a moment. Take those hard lines off, because we don't need them there. All right, so that belt is going to be right here. And that's pretty close to being in line. Okay. Now, I talked before about these elbows and you setting them in with that V tool. I'm going to show you that right now. You can see first off that the elbows look pretty good here in the front. Looking in the back, you can see one is off from the other. So our angle here isn't as high as it is on this side. This side, the angle is higher than it is on this side. So we're going to go ahead and alleviate that by carving up that angle. That's closer, but not quite. Let's do that again. You can see I'm not taking anything off the front of the spot. I'm taking it off the back, kind of, increasing that angle to bring it up to match the other side. That's pretty close right there, so I'm going to like that, okay? Now, something I can do with a V-tool, I often do if I'm working myself, is to put in the back side of this arm. That arm goes up to about here. I'm going to roughly guess that's about on this side here, and I'm going to use this V-tool to carve that line straight down to that corner. Why do I use a V-tool for this and not a knife? Because the V-tool is easier to drive sometimes. So it's easier to get it into position, push it through, and steer it in a way that doesn't have you going off the rails. It's a nice thing about a V-tool. So you can use that, or you can just use the knife. Just one of those things I want to show you can do with the V-tool, okay? So to smooth out this line here, I'm going to first come up like so, snap it out, and then I'm going to paring cut. Right, like so. Started tearing too much there, so I'm going to carve in the opposite direction to eliminate that. And yeah, that's a good start to that. I like that. So same thing, I'm going to carve up to that section. I'm going to carve down from it. And then I start tearing considerably. You can see it's getting deeper as it goes. So I need to stop there and then carve up to it rather than letting it get deeper. Like so. That's a good spot to be in so far. I like that. Okay, let's go ahead and do our belt right now and do our hands. We'll worry about the head later. You can see right now our head is way too thick. It's way too wide. We need to bring our shoulders down. There's a lot of things we need to do up here that we can work on doing as we get through here. But let's go ahead and work on the hands first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start tracing out these outlines here. So you can see the top of that thumb goes right over here. I'm going to push cut right along the top of that thumb. I'm going to try and make it to where my blade doesn't go too far past. You can see I did go a little bit past it. That's okay, because I'm going to carve down to that belt, and I'm going to carve over from that belt, and I'm going to carve up on top of that belt buckle, like so. Carve down to the belt buckle a little bit, because we're not going to be setting this in very deep. You see that right there? That's probably all the depth we're going to be setting that in. And the same thing for the belt and the hand. I'm going to try to free up some of these chips without recutting as much as it might necessarily need to. I don't want to recut over and over again for these things. So I'm going to try to limit that as much as I can. You understand? Now, for this hand, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing. I'm going to trace a line, and then just cut up to it and start removing things as I go. You see there's little fuzzies there around it. There are. Recut as you need to. Like so. Let's do the bottom of this belt right here. Cut across here to the other side. So now I'm going to want to do the same thing here with this sword. So I'm going to do a straight cut, going straight in along the plane of that sword. I'm going to push that in. I'm going to try to let the back of the blade here rest or stop right where that pivot is in the sword. So you can see that right here, that's where that point changes directions. That's where the back edge of the blade is going to be. The tip was all the way in here at the very top. I'm going to take that out and do the same thing on the back side. Pressing that tip in right at the top and then rocking it in until I get the base of that knife at the last spot here at the edge of the blade there. I need a little bit further, probably like so. I'm going to pull it out. Now I'm doing the same thing here. I'm going to go from the tip this time right here, back to that back portion. Same thing here. The tip in. Now I've got all these cuts done, but each of these cuts is angled. The ones the tip are angled like this, the ones up here are angled like this, which means these points on the sword here are the shallowest points on our cut so far. To remedy that and make it easier to cut loose, I can reverse those. So I can go with the tip in right there. I can go with the tip in right here and just kind of recut that a little bit. Same thing for these, and now with the tip in right here, push it in a bit. Tip in right here, push it in a bit. Now I should have most of this clear. It should be easy to carve up to it. Look at that, just a little slice cut, and boom, it's already wanting to come free. And you can see how deep that got right there, right? So it's pretty simple, pretty easy. We do the same thing right here. We do a stop cut right along the bottom side of that arm right there, and then we're going to carve right up to it along the inside there. And see how easy that comes? Because we cut and recut, freed up that sword. It just came loose relatively easy. Looks a lot better than it did. Nothing hard. Making it easy on ourselves. Okay, so we have freed up that side of the knife. Let's free up the other side. So stop cut along the bottom of our belt. Stop cut up to it. And then let's kind of cut over to it. I'm going to adjust this right there first. How do I want to do this? We're going to do a pairing cut, I believe, for the angle here. Gently going to cut over to it and chip it out. Like so. So I got a little depth right there, and we have freed up that sword pretty well. I like the way that's turned out. So let's take out the tops of that hand right here. Like so. And there's a little depth right through there. That looks good. Okay, now we need to set some depth on the hands and the belt, right? We freed the belt, we freed the knife, we freed the hands up from the body of the carving. We need to free them up from each other. So let's talk real fast about something to think about, okay? The hand is on top of the belt, which means the hand needs to be higher than the belt. But the hand is underneath the bracer, which means the bracer needs to be higher than the hand, which needs to be higher than the belt, but the buckle needs to be higher than the belt. So we need to be thinking about all of this so we know which direction to carve things on. So as I cut this line here, I need to remove this side so that it appears to be under the armor. And I need to, when I cut this line here and here, I need to remove this side so that the hand appears to be on top of the belt appears to be under the hand. And the buckle, when I cut this line here, I need to remove on this side so the buckle appears to be on top of the belt, right? All of these cuts, it is very particular about where you cut, on what side of the line you cut to remove wood, so that you create the right visual effect. If you make it backwards and the hand looks like it's on the outside of the armor, or the belt looks like it's higher than the hand, it's going to throw people off. It's not going to look as realistic as it could. And while we don't want these to look very realistic, we want them to look just a little bit more realistic than that mistake would allow them to look. We want them to have the illusion of realism while also looking like these flat plane Scandinavian figures that are very much not realistic looking, but are just, I mean, they have their own style, you know? And we want to make sure we maintain that style, and so that's what we're doing. Make sure we don't make a mistake. So let's start with putting in that line right here, that bracer. And I'm just going to remove a little bit of wood up to it, okay? Not even much. I just want to give the illusion of this depth. I don't want to have a lot of depth here. I don't need to have a lot of depth here. I can deepen it here if I remove too much there on the outside of the carving here, or the outside of the arm. I definitely want to have a little bit of depth. But I don't want to have the full depth of an actual arm. I just want to slightly, and take a look at this one. I just want to slightly set that in. You follow? That's all we're looking to do. Like these fingers here, see how they're goofy and they're in the wrong directions, kind of like they're off. I love that look. I think that looks fantastic. I think it looks fine. These ones are a bit more stripping. See that pinky is really thin compared to the other ones. I like that look of just kind of a helter-skelter, a little bit off, a little bit fun, a little bit whimsical. You know, it's a good look, and if you like the kind of thing, well, this is the right channel for you. All right, so for the hand, let's go ahead and put a stop cut here on the inside of that to the webbing of the thumb, from the webbing of the thumb along the thumb, and then the top of the thumb right there. And now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to try to carve that out right there. And so you can see we got a little bit of depth between that thumb, that hand, and that belt. Same thing right here. We'll carve up along so. And chip that stuff out. And bounce around as necessary to adjust things. Feel free to do the same thing. All right, so right here we're going to do the same thing. We're going to carve the outside of the belt, so of the buckle. This is the belt, so we want to make the belt go under the buckle. Set that up. This is the hand right here, and we want the belt to go under the hand. So I'm going to carve the belt on this side here. So that belt is a sunken portion here in the middle, with the hand, the buckle, the belt, the hand, the bracer. Same thing on this side. Take that off like so. Some more depth right there. So you can see we're making pretty good progress there. Now the thing about knives is they have blades on them, right? A knife like this will be double-edged, so we want to smooth out at an angle this side and this side of the blade. To do that, I'm just going to carve a bit of an angle on this carving, like so, and then cut that off of there. So you can see what we got started, a little bit of an angle for that. The same thing here, but because of this grain direction here, I'm going to come up with it, like so. Get that started again. Now we're going to do the same thing for this plane here, like so. And the same thing for this one. So we started to form that into a bit of a dagger. Now, daggers have a little bevel in the inside of that blade, like a chamfer, right? And you can do that with that little gouge we have here, number 9. I could take it and set it right in the middle, and then just dig out that little chamfer right up the line of that, and that provides just a little bit of shadow there. And you can see how much more realistic it looks. You don't have to add that. If you don't have that, if you don't have a gouge you can do that with, don't add that. But if you do have one, that's something you can do to put a little bit more detail into your carving. So that's where we're at with that. All right, just gonna round those edges off a bit as I go around here. Make things look a little bit better. All righty. So for these arms, we're going to put some shoulder pads in here. Just coming like maybe a 1/16 of an inch over. I'm going to draw down 1/16 of an inch up from that corner, draw over here, and that will continue around that side and around this side here. Now that elbow pad is on top. The bracer here is be under it. The armor is going to be under it. So this is going to be on top. So I'm going to carve, when I cut that line, I'm going to carve this down lower and this down lower. So same thing over here. Draw that line there and there. And that one will continue around here. And that one continues around there. Before I get too far into this, I'm going to round off these arms and these corners here like this. And then I'm going to put in some V-cuts in these corners, just to provide a little bit of realism there. I probably should have done these before we did like cutting here. If you need to adjust because of it, you absolutely can, like that, right? Hard to get in there with that angle. Yeah, that's looking better. This really hard line on the outside of that arm, that doesn't have to be there either. That's an untouched corner. We just take those little hard corners off. I can go ahead and start working on this right now. I can sink that line, carve up to it, continue all the way around here, carve up to it. Same thing up here, like so, and then carve down to it. Throws you off because that part in the middle needs to be up higher. Like so. And like so. So we started to get that pretty good. And we can take those hard corners off here. Like so. Looking pretty good. All right, so we're going to take off a little bit right here. Put that line, I should say. Then carve right up to it. Bottom side here, same thing. We're going to put that line in. Carve right up to it. Take off that hard edge here and here. Continue that line around here. And then I carve down to it. Like so. I'm making good progress. Okay. I'm just looking at them to evaluate what all I want to do next. I think we're doing all right. We're going to continue the belt around here in a little bit. Obviously, you can see we kind of stop it underneath the hands where all the detail is. But it's going to be easy to continue on because we're going to keep it the same height here to go around. Okay. I'm going to start to draw that around. That's the height of the belt. And the bottom of the belt is going to come from right there. Let's look at the other side here. Okay. The top of the belt is here. So same thing. We put that top. Like so. The bottom is going to come right like there. So the lines we had originally drawn were pretty good, like so. So let's go ahead and do that right now. To start with, on the inside of these arms, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a stop cut right there into that. Same thing on the other side, and all the way down to the belt line. So the tip of that knife is going in right there on the top of the belt line, because as I do this first cut here into that belt line, I want to be able to take a chunk out, like so, to set that belt in a bit, you know? I'm going to do the same thing over here. I've already got that stop cut in along the inside of the arm, so I'm going to do it right there and then carve down to it. And that helps me set it up a little bit easier. Now, when I'm doing this belt line all the way around here, I am slightly angling it up and in on the top side of the belt. On the bottom side of the belt, I'll be angling it down and in, like so. It just makes it a little bit easier to free up when it's not a hard, straight in line, and it makes it easier for you to clean up your cuts as well. I'm a big fan of easier cuts to clean up. Like so. That looks good. Looks good. This is going to be kind of the same thing. I'm going to do a little stop cut there on the back side of the hand. That way I can free this up if I need to. Relatively easy. We're not going to look for a crazy depth here. Just enough to set it apart. Bump it around the other side. And just keep on keeping on as you bring that around. If you need to get a little depth on it, you feel like because of the way that the carving is looking, you get some more depth on it. I feel like I need a little bit more depth on this, so I'm going to do the same thing. And your carving is going to dictate what you do. The pattern of your wood grain, how other cuts have gone. It's hard to follow a carving tutorial exactly cut by cut because you're inevitably going to have to adjust the wood grain of whatever carving you're doing. Some of you saying, hey Johnny, you said it before in the last video, or you said it before in this video. I do repeat myself often in these videos because I never know which video is someone's first video. Which one are they watching for the first time to start trying to learn how to wood carve? Which carving has spoken to them in a way that they're like, yes, that's the thing I want to make, and that's the thing that gets them started wood carving. So for those of you who heard some of these things before, you'll have to forgive me and just try to follow along visually as I let the newer folks on the channel know all the little ins and outs that you're already familiar with. I'm just going around right now cleaning things up, looking for problems. I think, okay, that's an issue. I don't like the way that looks. I don't like that hard line there. Going around cleaning things up. What I'm doing right now too is I'm softening, like it's too steep of an incline here. So I'm softening that. I'm bringing that incline further down. Take those hard edges off like that, so that we still get the growth from the waist out to the bottom, but it's a softer growth. It doesn't just happen all at once. It slowly goes out the further down away from the belt you get. That looks a bit better than the way it was originally. So yeah, I like the way that belt cinches in. I like the way it looks like it comes, the back, the higher back is out further, that comes down to the belt and goes out from the belt. I like the way that's looking. I think that's looking great. I think we're gonna like that. Alrighty. Now something we can do to add detail is we can use this gouge again, and we can go through here and just put a big channel here. And you don't have to use this style gouge if you don't want to. You can use a larger one. You could also, if you've seen other videos, do a little line right here, right? We can do little V-cuts and make a swirling line through here. And we just put V-cuts along each of these lines. It'll look like a twirling candy cane style pattern, which is pretty neat for a belt. So you can do that. If you don't want to do that, what you can do is something I like doing in these type of carvings is rounding off all of these corners, right? And if you only have a knife, this is absolutely the step you want to do, and then just stop here. I'm going to round off all these corners here. And keep on going around. Okay, once you get to that point, you got a nice big thick belt. Now what you can do is you can come in here with this gouge and just put a channel down the length of it. Right like so, all the way around to the side. And that adds a little bit of detail without a lot of effort, without a lot of extra work. We've added some flair to the carving. People go, look at the detail of the belt. Wow, look at how detailed he did that belt. And you're like, man, I didn't spend a lot of time on that belt. I just took a tool and worked around that belt, and it came out like that. But people get impressed with it because it looks impressive. It looks visually impressive, and it absolutely does look visually impressive. It looks fantastic. And look at that. That's neat, So yeah, that's what we can do right there. And I think that right now at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to work on our hood, our beard, and then our pauldrons, because we worked pretty good for the bottom of this carving so far. Okay, so that head is too wide. So what I want to do is I want to start rolling this in and thinning it out and bring that shoulder down a little bit. So you can see what I did there, right? Taking some off. We'll take off the same amount on the other side. Let's see here. Taking off both sides and the middle, front, the back. How am I doing? Looking pretty good. Let's do a bit more. A little bit more over here. And a little bit more over here. That's looking significantly better. I like that. Now what I want to do also is, because a hood doesn't come up to a clip and then come down, right? That's not like a hat does that, the bill of a hat. You see on these guys, we got it kind of coming down here. A little rounded out, right? And that looks really neat to provide shadow over the nose. I really like the look of that. That's what we're going to go for here. So to do that, we're going to put a 45-degree angle right across the front here. Okay? Right like so. And that's going to be our hood. Okay? On the front of this carving, I'm going to take off all these hard lines. If you see any hard lines on here at all, because we're going to draw on this, and we don't want our pencil being caught on anything. All right? Okay. So with that drawn on, you should have a relatively smooth front. You have 45-degree angle here, and you've got those shoulders in about where you've got them here. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to draw an upside down U. You can make this as wide as you want to, or as thin as you want to. What you want to try to do is make the angle here equal to the angle over here. Then it'll look uniform, okay? And we only come down to about the top of that point in the shoulder here. That's how far we're going to look to come down with that hood, okay? Relatively easy. Now the hard way of doing this is to start on one side and cut all the way over to the other side. The easy way to do this is to start in the middle and work your way down. Do half on one side and half on the other, okay? While we're carving this, we're going to keep it straight in on that plane and work it around to the bottom. We're going to do the same thing then from here and work it around to the bottom. But we're going to keep it straight in on this plane. So the knife blade is going to be in here like this, and I'm just going to work it around that edge, keeping it straight in the whole time, all right? So here I go, and I'm not trying to get real deep. I'm not going crazy deep. So I'm pushing that knife blade in about yay much. I'm just going to be drawing a line. Just drawing a line on down. And you can see by the time I get here, I'm not that deep. I'm barely that deep right there, okay? Same thing, from that point in the middle here, and I'm just going to draw on down to the bottom. And again, I was about yay deep, okay? Not very deep. Now I'm going to carve from here up into that point. I'm going to try to keep that knife tip right along that hood as I come up here, okay? Right along that hood, and then rock it up and in. Didn't quite get it all. I can chip it out like so. And the same thing here with a paring cut on the other side, like that, and chip that out as well. Making good progress. Let's go ahead and even it up a little bit more, like so. Now we're going to look at putting in our nose. Now our nose is going to be nice and wide. That's what a dwarf's nose is. You can make this thin. I'm going to go for a detailed nose, one like this guy right here, okay? That's going to require a little bit of extra work, and it's going to require a gouge. If you don't want to do a nose like this, what I would suggest doing, if you don't have a gouge, is to just draw it as a big square like so, and then round off the corners. That's really easy to do. It's not hard. This nose we're going to carve is not hard either, but it does take an extra tool to do it well and easily, okay? I'm going to try to show you. You know what? I might be able to show you how to do it without a gouge. Let's attempt that, okay? So a stop cut for where I want the bottom of the nose to be, and that stop cut is about halfway down our hood, okay? Because we have a big nose. It's about half the length of the hood. I put that stop cut in, and that stop cut is coming in at an angle like so, right there, okay? And now from that middle point here, from the middle of that nose, I'm going to angle up slightly and come in. Take that out. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side, slightly up, and take that out. So now you can see we got kind of wings on here, kind of flat in the middle, goes up on one side, up on the other side, okay? That is fantastic. That's exactly what we want to see. Now the issue is here, to do without a knife, I don't know. How do I do this exactly without a gouge? Because the gouge that we need to put in the sides of the nose, I need to take out wood right here. To do that well, yeah, the easiest way is to do this right here. With the gouge, come in just that high above that nose. So just that high above that corner of the nose right here. We're just going to come with that gouge right here. And it's going to carve straight up in, okay? Just like that right there. Same thing the other side. Straight up and in, okay? We got two of those, and I'm just going to clip those out on either side. There and there. Like I said, if you don't have the tools to do this nose that way, just do a big blocky one and round it around the outside edges like I've done on other carvings. Now for this guy here, for his nostrils, we're going to carve around like so and around like so, okay? So I'm going to start from here. I'm going to keep it straight. I'm going to carve straight around as I do this, okay? So straight around like so. Pretty easy, pretty simple cut. Now the same thing on the other side. Straight around like so. Now to open up those nostrils, I'm going to come at an angle up here, and I'm going to follow that around like this right here, and then chip that out. You see what that creates? A little bit of a line, shadow, excuse me. So I'm going to come in from this angle right here. From that, I'm going to carve it down like so. I'm going to chip it out. Nice and easy. If you want to, and I do want to, take that hard edge off that nostril like so. Same thing the other side. Take the hard edge off that nostril. Work on softening these hard lines here on the nose. That's a nice wide nose. That nose looks fantastic. How wide it is. I love that. Try to smooth those lines out. And you got a brush too. Take your brush if you need to. Break loose all those hard lines there and might just clean up just like that. Looks absolutely fantastic now, okay? Now we want to go ahead and connect to the outside of the hood right to there. So that's where our beard is going to be, right? So we want to make sure that it's easily delineated, the difference between the two, and just a little V cut on each side help you separate that. Now that's the face, and this is all going to be beard. And so coming out of that hood is all going to be beard, okay? I'm going to soften these corners here. I can tell right now that they're much too hard. That's looking a lot better already. Okay, now for this hood, it can come down quite a bit if you want to. Like if you want to have that point come real far down and then go up and over, that's one way of doing it. So let's go ahead and do that way on this guy here, right? We're gonna have that point come down to about the same side on either side. And then from there, it's gonna go up and over. So that's what our hood's gonna do. And our hood's gonna come back over here, all the way around to the back of the head, and then round like so, okay? So let's go ahead and do that and set that in. Easy peasy. We can follow that hood down to that corner. Follow it down to that corner. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut straight in on that line right here, rocking that knife back and forth, and cut right up to it to free that up. You see, we started to set the hood in just like that. Same thing as we work around the outside edge. Little V cuts around there to set that in. All the way around the back. Straight down cut here on the right shoulder, the left side of our carving. That's looking absolutely fantastic. What I want to do too is I want to soften this line coming up to that hood. I'm going to carve that underline out right there, and it looks kind of like the hood is sitting bunched up on that back haunch. You see? Something else you can do too here is you can start to try to curve in and out here in the back of the hood on these back panels here, and try to curve that as much as you can. And if you do that curve, right, I'm just carving in and out real quick, right? The sides too. It'll give this hood a softer look, like it's actually cloth sitting on top of something. And that will really help set apart that hood all the way around, just like that. We're going to do the same thing on the top part right here, okay? But very small little in and outs, in and out, in and out. And you don't have to say in and out like I'm doing when you're doing it. Oh, dear God, I'm an idiot. You can just do it without saying it out loud, but I'm just, see what I'm talking about right there? A little swoop. It adds a little bit of shadow, a little bit of movement to the cloth hood on this dwarf. And that is enough to set it apart. Look at that. That's actually looking really fantastic, isn't it? I really like how he's turning out. That's fantastic. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing for tracing this line out here, all the way down to that point. You can see I'm bringing that tip all the way down to that, carving up to it like that right there to separate that out. Okay, right here, same thing we just did on the other side, all the way over, carving right up to it, and we've separated out that hood. Now, this pauldron is going to come over and then over. We're going to take it all the way around the back. Once we get just barely past the elbows, then we come up at a 45-degree angle. Okay, so over here, we're just a little bit up from that corner. So a little bit up from that corner, and we 45 over. Come over across that armpit here, right across till we get just past it. A 45-degree angle up. Okay. And now when we look at this, we can see those shoulders are a bit too hard, they're too heavy, they're too far out. But we correct that on this guy here by taking little divots out right there on that one too. We do the same thing over here, little divots out. So we can adjust that after we get these set in. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a good stop cut right there. Okay. And now I'm going to carve up to that hood and then release that piece if I can. Get out, darn you. There we go. And then underneath this pauldron, we're going to carve up to it so that the arm are underneath it. Looks like it's sitting underneath it. Like that. We want to make sure that arm goes all the way up in under that. That pauldron sitting over the arms. Looking pretty good. All the way over and sink that line in right there. Carve it up to it. There we go. Look at that, huh? Looking pretty good. Now, same thing right here. We want that arm to go all the way up into that space. So we're going to do that to ensure that it does. Right, like that. Okay. 45 there. Do the same thing we did on the front side. Like that. Like this. Like so. Set that line in here. And then we're going to carve up to that line so that the armor on the arm is under the pauldron. Make sure that's all the way up underneath there. Like that. He's looking a lot better. Okay, now for these shoulders that we talked about, I'm going to come in and just carve up in and out on that shoulder. I don't have to say in and out when I do it. Look at that. Doesn't it soften up pretty neat? That's nice. Do the same thing over here. And I'm only going about halfway in. You know, not all the way, just enough to provide a little bit of contour to that, a little bit of something, you know, that people can notice. Oh, that's fantastic. Let's do that same thing over here. Bring it in a little bit like that. Yeah, look at that. Oh, I'm liking the way that turns out. I'm really liking the way that's turning out. Okay. So, next step, what can we do next? We need to work on our beard and we need to add some details to the hand and the bottom of the tabard. So, what kind of beard do we want? Now, you can see on these other guys here, I got two different styles going on. This one's got a braid, and in the video I did for the Queen, for the chest piece of the Queen, I showed how to do braids really well in that video. So if you want to do a braid, you can do a braid in this beard. You can also just do a separated beard like that. The big mustache. This guy's got a big mustache, but it's flowing upwards. This guy's got a big mustache that's flowing downwards. So two distinct styles there, right? So what kind of mustache do we want on this guy? And bear with me for a second while I sharpen my pencil up. This is a very expensive pencil sharpener. Good knives always are. Okay. Let's see here. We could just do a big droopy mustache for this guy. One that comes down like that. And let's say the beard actually comes in right in line with the hood, maybe, you know? And so this mustache comes down past the beard. Yeah. That's interesting. That's something that, you know, we can do here like that right there. Huh? What do you think of that? Huh? So that beard will only come down so far, but this mustache will come down past it. That's a different look too for this guy. I like that a lot. I think that's going to be neat. Now, the thing about this is the mustache is on top. So the mustache needs to stay on top. We need to take out beard here to keep the mustache on top, and then take out belly here to keep that mustache or the beard on top of the belly, and the mustache on top of the beard. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're looking at. To start with, let's just start tracing all this out. Okay, so that's the inside of that hood. I can start taking out some wood right there, all the way up to our cheekbone. Same thing on the other side. Take some wood out up to our cheekbone. Right? Looking good so far. From the inside of that mustache, I can carve that down to here. Same thing here. Carve that down to there. Now I can take a lot of meat out up underneath here. Like that. Really set that mustache in. I mustache you a question. How many of you were thinking of a stupid dad joke like that? If I'm not the only one, kudos. Kudos to you. Look at that. That's fantastic mustache. I love that. Okay, for the inside, or the out, yeah, right there. For this side of it, same thing. Right from that nostril, okay, that's where we're carving the outside of the mustache from, that nostril. We bring it right back down to that point, like so. And then we carve out this side of it to set it apart from the beard underneath. And then we're going to do a paring cut on this the same way. Just enough to set it apart, you see? Once we got it set apart, we can soften that edge. Soften that edge. Soften the edge of the inside of that mustache as well. Okay. It's a big old mustache. I like the way that mustache looks. Okay, so our beard is going to end there, and there, and right here is where that's going to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a stop cut right there, and then right here. I'm going to cut right up to it. There we go. Again, right there. Right there. Take out that big chunk. And we've got some work to do here, okay? Because that takes out a lot of chunk here, okay? So we need to make this belly make sense now, and it's out kind of far. So we may need to adjust things accordingly. So we can start trying to flatten it out as best we can. Maybe he comes out to his belly a bit. Maybe he's got a bit of a pudge, but we need to make sure both sides of it are looking that way. So let's set in deeper this side of the mustache as we carve up underneath it here, like so. Set that in nice deep. Yeah. Well, the ones where I am doing a lot of thinking, the videos I should say, where I'm doing a lot of thinking about what the next step is and what I should be doing, I get quiet sometimes. So I apologize for like, why isn't he giving me more instructions? Why is he not talking? I'm doing cleanup and I'm thinking about how this is going to go, because we're designing this one here as we carve a little bit, you know? And I like doing that so much more than not on carvings, because it enables you to see more about how design works for me. And how it works for me might be how it works for you too, because we're all learning, right? I say this before, I'll say this again. I am no expert at this. I'm an enthusiastic amateur sharing with you what I've found out, what I'm learning, and also challenging myself at the same time to get better, okay? So look what we've done here, right? We brought that belly in on the top and the bottom. We bring it a little bit more on the bottom here. And then, yeah, that's about the same spot. Okay, now we're going to adjust that belt. That belt is out too far. The hands, okay, the hands are just out further than we thought they'd be in the original. And that's fine. The hands can be out further. That belt needs to come in. And there's nothing wrong with that. Take a little bit off the front here, like that. And that's a pretty good spot for that belt. Soften that hard edge. Soften that hard edge. Now you could use the V-tool here too, right? The V-tool is easy to pilot, and I said it before. So you can draw a straight line right here, right up like that. Okay? Straight line. You can also angle it over and make one side of that straight line flat. See how I did that? Same thing over here if you wanted to. Like so. So one side is pretty straight, and the other side has a nice little angle to it. Like that. Like that. Okay. So, making great progress, doing good things, looking fantastic. Let's draw us a skull on here because he's an assassin or a rogue, okay? I'm going to do a little flat angle, flat middle, straight down, angle in, angle down, like so. That's a skull, okay? And then inside the skull, we do 3 little pyramid cuts, like this, and like that. We got a little skull, okay? So you can use this big old knife if that's what you'd like to do. If you've got a little detail knife and you'd rather use a detail knife, use your detail knife and just trace straight, 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 straight. And just put little lines, little draw cuts, if you will, along each of those lines. And then we just add a little bit of depth. Not really going to take out a lot, just a little bit, like that little bit right there, just enough to separate it. Okay? Don't try to get overzealous how deep you get. You just want it to be noticeable that the skull is there. I'm getting way too deep there. I didn't mean to get that deep, but that's okay. I can adjust it. Somebody else outside of me will make that mistake. There's nothing wrong with that. Looking not terrible, but not great. There we go. That's better. I like the kind of off-centered, cartoonish style skull, right? So a little V-notch right there, and up and into it. Tiny little V-notch, and up and into it, like that. See? Watch anything flex. Nothing crazy. If you want to, practice this skull on another sheet of paper first, if that helps you. Or not sheet of paper. Another piece of wood, not paper. Don't try to carve paper. Right? Look at that. We got a little skull right there. That looks really neat. Okay. Now, what else can we do for detail here? Okay, we want to add the front of the tunic. So let's have that come down from the arms right there. And then come across like so. If we do it to the hands right there, it's going to be coming right about there. And the back side will come down from about the corner of that pauldron there at an angle. And over that corner of that pauldron again, right there. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to it's like the bottom of a tunic, basically, hanging down. We're not looking to get a lot of depth. We're just looking to set it in as another little thing on the carving to set it apart. Okay? Like so. Snip it out. Like that. So that's what we're looking to do right there. The same thing on the front. We're going to kind of hide it underneath that that knife too. So, like so. Someone asked me recently. I was at the wood carving meeting with Wayne Larimore. A fellow named Zach. He said, Johnny, he said, when you do carvings like the nativity set, he asked in particular, he said, how many times do you carve it before you do the video on it? And I said, not many, basically. These are the two Dwarven Rogues I've done before. This one quite a while ago. He followed me on social media. I did him a while ago, and he's been sitting around the house for a bit. And I thought, man, I'd like to do a video on him. This one I did just the day before yesterday, just so I could try to remember how to carve him. And this is the one I'm doing now. Normally when I do a video, I do one, and then I do another one to do the video on. There's not a whole lot of practice there, because I want to see you guys, have you guys see me do it without a lot of practice, because that's kind of the shtick of the channel, right? I am not an expert. I am learning as I go, and I want you to see that process, because I believe that has benefit. I believe that it has benefit in learning what the process is of designing and how to think of things, what I'm looking for and how I'm correcting it, how I'm thinking about how I'm going to correct it, right? Because there are folks who have been carving longer than I have, considerably longer than I have, that can't design any of their own carvings. And that is because designing your own carvings is another hobby outside of wood carving itself, right? Just like sharpening is a companion hobby to carving, designing a carving, figuring out how to carve something original, that is a process and a hobby in and of itself outside of just carving. And it's a hobby I've been developing kind of in tandem with everything else, which is why I can do a guy like this, and some folks can't who've been carving longer than I have. So it's because I've developed that hobby as well. Just like I can sharpen my knives really well now because I spent a lot of time learning how to do that, whereas carvers who've been carving longer than I have and have never tried to sharpen a knife or never tried to learn, they might not be able to. Okay, so we've got this guy looking absolutely fantastic. That beard could stand to have a little more texture, so let's do that. You don't have to do that. If you're happy with the way it looks right now, then don't worry about it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some Dockyard tools. This is a 3mm U. I love Dockyard tools because they're like $15 to $18 each, and you can get a little U, you can get some V tools, you can get straight skews. The 5mm U is a really great one to start with, but you can get a whole set of 5 for like 80 bucks on eBay. So this is a 3mm U, 4mm U, and 5mm U. And you can see this get progressively larger, right? Different sizes. And when it comes to texturing and detailing, they're absolutely fantastic. But if you don't just use one and you alternate between them, you can give some really interesting textures to your mustache, to your beards, and to all of the hairs that you're going to be doing on your dwarves or whatever other creatures you're trying to detail and add stuff into. I like the way the Dockyards do this. And see, I'm just trying to randomize this. And this is a good skill to learn too for when we get closer to Christmas. You do the same thing to Santa's beard. Same exact thing. Now, we've got up and in along the mustache, right? For that beard that's underneath it, we're going to come in straight up. Straight up. Straight up. There's a separate entity kind of hair underneath that all. This one's going to follow the flow of the mustache. Like so. And we got some fuzzies to clip out. Something I didn't do, I didn't put nostrils in on that nose. I just now noticed that we've gotten all this far and I never put any nostrils in on that nose. And that's terrible. We cannot leave that stand. We cannot walk away without having any nostrils on that nose. So, how can you put nostrils in there? Well, one, you can use a gouge and you can just gouge some nostrils in there. Or two, you can use a knife and do a little V cut, okay? Like do a triangle cut here, here, and then clip it out. Either way you want to go. If you're going to use a gouge, I would just put it in on the side and then just stand it up like so. So in from the side a little bit right here, okay? And then just stand it up like that. And then come up underneath it to free that little chip out, each one, and then we got the shadow of 2 nostrils right there, just looking absolutely stellar. Absolutely stellar. Okay, and that is our carving for today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take him over to the sink and I'm going to wash him soap and water for 2 to 3 minutes. When I do that, I'm going to scrub him with both hands. I'm going to be rubbing his face, the whole carving, the entire thing. I'm going to use hand soap. The entire thing will be covered in hand soap, and I'm going to scrub the crud out of him. I really am. And then when I come back in here, you're going to see what it looks like, okay? Look at this, okay? The knives. See where they're all sitting right now, okay? In the pile with the brush on top of them. I'm not going to do any more carving on this. So I want you to see what this looks like here in 2 or 3 minutes when I come back, and you'll see how much the water cleans up the carving and shows you what's happening underneath it. This is a cleaner carving than it looks, and you're going to see that in a moment. Alrighty, and here he is, all washed up, looking absolutely wonderful. I love the way he turned out. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. Really neat carving, a lot of fun. I love this this huge mustache and that short beard. I think he kind of goes good with the other guys I got going on here. And so now I'm going to to give these two a different coating of stain. And that's all I got for you today, folks. Thank you so much for sticking around at the end of the video and watching the whole thing. Just to show you our team real fast again, these are our Dwarven Rogues, right? And we got the one right here done today, and the other ones are all finished up. Again, this one here is the red Cabernet stain from Varathane. Cabernet is the color and Varathane is the brand, and that's an oil-based stain, and it looks absolutely fantastic. And that says Paste Natural Finishing Wax on him to get him to that point, okay? This one is black stain, and the black stain is True Black Wood Finish from Minwax. So I got that mixed 50-50 with black walnut, not black walnut, with regular Danish oil. So True Black stain mixed with regular Danish oil, 50-50, and I just shake that up really good in another bottle. And yeah, I think that provides a neat look. The black stain by itself does provide one look, but I think it's just too much for me. And having this guy with the 50-50 mix is a lot better, I think. I kind of like that look a little bit more. It's grayish and it's not as dark, and I'm pretty happy with that. So that's how I got that look as well. Finally, this guy here is the one that I do often. This is the Black Walnut Danish Oil and Paste Finishing Wax. I've got a video on the channel how to apply Danish oil and wax, so watch that if you want to know how to get that application done so you can get your dwarves looking just the same, or paint them. You can do anything you want with these guys. Again, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. I really appreciate it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, especially if this video content was any kind of use to you. If you enjoyed this content at all, it really does help the channel. It helps me out, and I really do appreciate it. Head over to Instagram, Facebook, give me a like and a follow over there that we can see everything I've got going on and see what other things you might be interested in. I share a lot about wood carving, and yeah, that's where we're at. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. I really do appreciate it. Head over to the website. You can buy shirts like this and hats, all kinds of stuff on the website. And yeah, you can see more about the stuff I got going on. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye.